But when he's coming back from the second test with riches, the word kaved, heavy, actually means kvedut, heaviness of spirit. Shehaya yareh lenafsho, because he was um, afraid, concerned for his own spirit, mipnei ha'ashirut, because of the wealth. And for those of you who would like to follow the text, have the text in front of you as you're listening to or viewing this lesson, you can find our source sheet with the text on the website. You will click on Jewish resources, and the website is Hebrew Learning Circles. Then you go down to down the drop-down menu to Parsha videos, and that's where the source sheet is. Source sheet Lekh Lekha video, and you can enjoy both the Hebrew and the English as you listen and view this lesson. Today, Lekh Lekha, we're going to explore with the Ishbitzer a few verses, a few psukim in the text. The very beginning, the very pasuk, the first pasuk says, "Vayomer Adonai el Avraham, Lekh lecha me'artzecha u'moladecha," and God says to Abraham, "Go forth from your land, from the land of your birth, from the house of your father, Beit Avicha el asher haaretz asher arecha, to a land that I will show you." And then 8 verses down, it says, so Abraham and Sarah and their whole entourage, they take the daring travel to a new land, and they arrive in the land of Canaan, and they explore the land and begin settling down, and they build at a place. Actually, it's in between Beit El and Hai. And they build an altar, and it says Vayikra b'Shem Adonai, and God calls out in the name of God. And the Ishbitzer is going to ask, when Abraham is calling out in the name of God, what's the substance of that? What is he actually saying? What is he praying for? So here we go. The Ishbitzer starts. Vayiven sham mizbeach le'Adonai vayikra b'Shem Adonai, quoting the verse. This is verse 8, Genesis chapter 12. And he continues, Nisayon harishon shel Avraham Avinu haya Lekh Lekha. This Lekh Lekha, this go forth, the journey from Haran, where he had been living, to Canaan, was his first test from God, his first spiritual test. 1 out of 10, say Chazal. Ainu aniyut v'tzimtzum. Meaning, what was the test? What was the essence of the test? What was he being tested with? You may have thought that he was being tested to go to some new land, or he was tested to travel, which he had not done in a long time. But the Ishbitzer says the test was actually the test of poverty and contraction. Because this is the first thing a person needs to clarify and rectify within him or herself, and he's saying that as a generality for all people. So a person does not come to have gripes about the Holy One, blessed be, God forbid. Right? So the test is that, will poverty and scarcity and contraction distract you from your connection to God, your spiritual connection, from your spirituality, which is actually more common than not. It's easy to have faith when everything is going well. But when things are lacking, it tends to obscure that level of consciousness. אך שיבקש מהשם יתברך שלא יבוא חס וחלילה לדקדוקי עניות. Such that Abraham needed to pray, to plead, שיבקש מהשם יתברך, from the Holy One, blessed be, שלא יבוא חס וחלילה לדקדוקי עניות, that he should not fall into concerns about poverty. שמעבירים את האדם על דעת קונו, which take a person away from being mindful of his or her creator, of God. בעיקר דקדוקי עניות, and the most important thing in the concerns of poverty, now he's going to elaborate about what does poverty mean. היינו מי שאינו שמח בחלקו, and here he's going to a Mishnah and referring to a Mishnah, a person who is not content with their portion. Miu ashir adam hasameach b'chilko, says the Mishnah. Who's a rich person? A person who's content with their portion. So here the Ishmael is saying, remember who is a poor person, a person who's not content with their portion, and is greedy for excess material goods. And about this quality, which is very common, a person needs to plead with the Holy One, blessed be, that the person would not be greedy for excess material goods. As it was written about our forefather Jacob, incidentally the grandson of Abraham, and he's going to quote Yaakov ish tamim, and this is from Genesis chapter 25, verse 27. And Jacob was a whole person, meaning that his spirit was whole, with no greed for excess material. Just all he needed was to follow the will of the Creator, the blessed Creator. And whatever comes from the Creator, he receives with love. That is the archetype of Yaakov. And this was the substance of the prayers of our father Abraham, may peace be upon him, with that first test. But he's with that first test, he was praying that he should be content with his portion and that he does not fall into concerns about poverty. וזה פירוש ויקרא בשם אדוני, and that is the meaning of the verse, and he called out to Adonai. היינו, meaning, שהעניות לא יעבירנו חס וחלילה על דעת קונות, that the poverty should not take him away, God forbid, from mindfulness of his Creator. So I just want to jump back for a moment and look at the trip, as a peril in the realm of poverty. Remember that Abraham and Sarah and the whole entourage, they had land, they had a farm, they had lots of cattle. They were cattle herders, and they had their ways. They knew where the water was. They knew where their sustenance came from. They knew where the feed for the cattle was. They knew how they had confidence. They had a life pattern that gave them confidence in and trust in sustenance. But when you take all that and you go on the road to a land that, some new land, the concern is, how will I make a living? Will I be able to retain that level of sustenance? Or would the perils of the way put me in at the risk of hunger and loss? And a good example of that is as Americans is those pioneers who went out to the West, right, and the dangers of for life and sustenance that they experienced. So the first test was about poverty. The first test was about will I be able to survive? Will I have sustenance? How will I handle scarcity and challenges of that kind spiritually? How will that affect my consciousness, my mindfulness, my connection with the divine? Velken, says the Ishbitzer, and this is why שחזר ממצרים נאמר ואברהם כבד מאוד. So the Ishbitzer here is reminding us that in our parsha, once the next thing that happens to Abraham, and this becomes the second test, is when they arrive in the land of Canaan and they start settling down, all of a sudden there is famine. And again, they have to pick up and they have to go to the land of Egypt, where there was the Nile, which was a constant source of water, and people could survive. And in fact, in the Torah, more than once, our forefathers, when there is famine, need to go down to Egypt. That's apparently what people did. And Abraham and Sarah and the entourage, they're going down to Egypt. And when they're in Egypt, they get into trouble with the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh, I'm going to cut that story short. Just the essence of it is that the Pharaoh wrongs Abraham and Sarah, and is inflicted by a plague from God. And the Pharaoh understands that the plague is sourced in what the Pharaoh has done, how he wronged Abraham and Sarah. And in order to stop the plague, the Pharaoh makes it up to Abraham and gives him lots of riches, basically gold and silver and more cattle. And when Abraham finally returns from Egypt to the land of Canaan, he is now richer than he was when he came down there. So he's coming down with incredible, you could say, luck, incredible wealth. He did well. So in that context, the scripture says, and this is why when Abraham comes back from Egypt, Ne'emar ve'Avraham kaved me'od. The language in the text is, and Abraham was very heavy. The literal meaning of heavy is that he's loaded with riches, with gold and silver. But the Ishbitzer is going to seize another layer, a deeper layer in that statement. And he continues, Hainu, meaning, אחר שנתברר בעניות בבירור גמור בניסיון הראשון, after Abraham clarified and rectified the issue of poverty and lack through the first test, which is the trip from Haran to Canaan. And by the way, here the Ishbitzer is speaking Kabbalistically, according to Isaac Luria, the Holy Ari. Each person, each one of us, comes to Earth to clarify something in our soul, more than one thing, perhaps, something to overcome some kind of and perfect some kind of trait within us. That is the purpose of life on Earth, according to the Kabbalah. And he's saying that Abraham's first test or first clarification, which he attained, he succeeded, was the issue of poverty and being able to remain connected spiritually through that challenge. And says the Ishbitzer, Ne'emar kaved me'od lashon kvidut. But when he's coming back from the second test with riches, the word kaved, heavy, actually means kvedut, heaviness of spirit. Shehaya yareh lenafsho, because he was um, afraid, concerned for his own spirit, mipnei ha'ashirut, because of the wealth. And he brings a proof text to show that this was not unique to Abraham. The Ishbitzer continues, Ketfilot Shlomo HaMelech alav shalom, as were the prayers. Similarly, King Solomon, may peace be upon him, as we read in Proverbs, Mishlei Lamed Chet, in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8, Rosh ve'osher al titen li, Rash ve'osher al titen li, meaning, please God, says King Solomon, do not give me poverty and do not give me wealth. Uvelot ne'emar, and now he's going to bring another proof text to put this even in more of context. Uvelot lo ne'emar lashon kaved. He says, Abraham and Sarah and their nephew Lot are all coming back from having spent time in Egypt, and they're all rich. Lot was also granted gold and silver and more cattle, and Lot is also coming back rich. And the scripture says, but with regard to Lot, lo ne'emar lashon kaved. It does not mention that Lot came back heavy. רק נאמר וגם לוט ההולך את אברהם היה וכולי. It only says that Lot came back likewise rich and loaded, but it does not mention the word kaved as it did with regards to Abraham. ואין והיה אלא לשון שמחה, כי לא היה בו שום יראה כלל. And that shows that Lot did not have that spiritual sensitivity. He was not concerned about his connection with his creator. He was content and he was very happy that he made it, that he was rich. And he had no concern about being distracted or being spiritually compromised. Ma she'ein ken be'Avraham, which is not the case with Abraham. Hiv kaved mipnei yirah. It says specifically kaved, heavy, both materially but also in spirit, because of his concern, his fear. Al ken ktiv vayelech lemasa'av. And obviously the fear is his concern about his spiritual standing. And that's why it says, when he comes back to Canaan after the stay in Egypt, vayelech lemasa'av vayikra sham Avraham v'chulei. Again, the pasuk repeats. Avraham again builds an altar and calls out to God. Because he was now concerned about how his wealth will affect him spiritually. Kanal v'chen birel b'chol ha'inyanim, and thus Abraham was rectified both these matters of poverty and wealth and attained that level. So there's the Ishbitzer. So there are two tests, and I think that it really applies. It's very intuitive. Applies to our lives today. We know that our material standing, whether in poverty or in wealth, is puts us at risk spiritually, and Ishbitzer here is teaching us how the journey, the spiritual journey, Lekh, Lekha, go forth, is really a metaphor for our journey through life, and how we really need to call out and pray as a way of spiritual cleansing, of our excessive concern about lack and loss of trust in the providence and the abundance of the universe, and our excessive or the kind of slumber that can happen to us spiritually when we are in excessive wealth and the risks of greed and our attachment in that way. So may we all be so blessed to find that equilibrium, that equanimity. And thank you for learning with me today. Again, Reb Eli is going to come back and join us next week. What did you take from this lesson? Is this relevant? What did you see in it? Please leave a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Do like, do share. We certainly appreciate that. Shalom for now.
Ayim rabim lo yuklu